The one and only. I think that's the best way to describe this one, and I'm sure the residents of Elie will immediately know what I'm referring to when I say that. Whilst tornadoes are rare in Canada compared to the United States, Canada is still ranked as the second country in the world with the most tornadoes per year. Fortunately, most of the Canadian tornadoes are ranked as F0 to F2 intensity. However, just over 17 years ago, on June 22, 2007, Canada's one and only F5 tornado occurred in the town of Elie, Manitoba. Southern Manitoba's synoptic situation on June 22nd was conducive to a major severe weather event. This was thanks to a low pressure system coming in from the western province of Saskatchewan. It spent most of the day travelling across Saskatchewan before eventually arriving in southern Manitoba in the evening. As this low pressure system approached Elie, a warm front was positioned north of the town for much of the day. It was trailed by a cold front residing west of Elie near the Lake Manitoba basin. A lake breeze boundary was also present south of Lake Manitoba. Thanks to very warm air situated over southern Manitoba, the daytime temperatures climbed into the high 20s degrees Celsius. Uncomfortably high humidity and strong wind shear meant that the conditions were favourable for supercells to form. They of course did develop in the warm sector that was located to the west in the Red River Valley and surrounding areas. Thanks to the lake breeze boundary, the atmosphere remained capped for most of the day, preventing storm initiation. Eventually, come the evening, storms were beginning to fire off, and at around 6:25 PM Central Daylight Time on June 22, 2007, Canada's one and only F5 tornado was born as it touched down north of the Trans-Canada Highway. Initially, after touching down north of the Trans-Canada Highway, a heavily used 4-lane divided highway, it tracks southeastward along the route. It's important to note that this highway is the province's primary east-west route carrying the majority of traffic within and through Manitoba. Thanks to its southeastward path, it eventually crossed over the highway, picking up and overturning a semi-trailer and tractor-trailer. Once it had crossed the highway, it took a sharp turn towards the east and then another sharp turn towards the south. It then tracked southwards briefly before doing an extremely slow loop and heading back south. This all happened within the span of 1.6 kilometers. During the loop, it was doing F1 to F2 level damage and had grown to a width of 50 meters. It hit the town's flour mill at F2 intensity, overturning multiple semi-trucks and buckling building walls inwards. It caused over $1 million Canadian in damage to the flour mill alone. With the mill having been hit and the tornado heading south again, it ran parallel to the Jansen Road at F0 intensity, but continued to grow as it reached its peak width of almost 300 meters. The F0 intensity for this tornado didn't last long though. As it reached the intersection of Jansen Road and Road 61 North, it changed its path eastward directly towards the southwest edge of Elie. It was at this point where it rapidly intensified, quickly becoming an F4 tornado as it looped over Elie Street. This is where the largest amount of damage from the tornado occurred. It damaged dozens of homes, severely damaged one, and destroyed 3 houses. The damage survey stated that one of them, a 2-story house which was made of brick by the way, was well built and bolted to its foundation. It was completely lifted off its foundation and thrown into the air, breaking apart as it did. What remained of it landed 23 meters away from where it initially stood. This is what justified the F5 intensity of this tornado, along with it having ripped off some sill plates and snapping the bolts that supported them. 2 other houses in the area were almost completely lifted off of their foundations and were classed as having received F4 level damage. Other houses in the area received F2 or F3 level damage. They suffered from collapsed exterior walls and roofs that were completely torn off. Outside of the damage to the houses, hydro lines were ripped apart, many trees were debarked, and cars were flipped and thrown around. The most notable incidents included a van full of drywall that was tossed over 100 meters and a car that landed on what remained of a neighbor's roof. All of this took place in just a span of 4 minutes, but for a town not used to tornadoes, let alone ones of this intensity, I'm sure it felt like a lifetime. The tornado, now having decimated the southwest corner of Elie, exited on a southwest trajectory and rapidly dissipated. In total, despite the 2 loops that the tornado did, it travelled 4.3 kilometers across the western side of Elie and reached a peak width of almost 300 meters. It's estimated that its peak wind speeds were anywhere between 420 to 510 kilometers an hour. One strange thing to note about this twister though was that it seemed to be at its most intense just as it was approaching its roping out stage, showing that even thin tornadoes are capable of intense damage. The aftermath of the tornado saw an estimated $39 million Canadian in damage. Miraculously, despite the F5 intensity. Only minor injuries were reported, and no one was killed by the tornado thanks to their preparedness. One thing I will say though is that I've been unable to find any news recordings, official warnings, or alerts about this tornado from Environment Canada, so I'm not sure where the preparedness came from. The following day, a survey team from Prairie and Arctic Storm Prediction Center was sent out by Environment Canada. The team noted that the damage pointed to a tornado of F4 to F5 intensity, but as Canada had never received an F5 tornado up until that point, they went conservative and gave it an F4 rating. The team wanted more time to assess the information, and almost 3 months later, in September, the rating was upgraded to F5 intensity after they analysed video footage of the tornado and reassessed the damage. Thus, it became the one and only F5 tornado to ever hit Canada, and just one of 2 F5 tornadoes that year. The other occurred in Greensburg, Kansas, just a month and a half prior on May 4th. The Elie tornado joined a list of just 10 confirmed F5 rating tornadoes since 1999. At the time of the Elie tornado, Canada had not adopted the Enhanced Fujita scale. That came 6 years later in 2013. Despite the upgrade to the F5 rating, there were still concerns about whether it actually was an F5 since it was such a slow-moving tornado. In 2008, Patrick J. McCarthy, D. Carlson, and J. Slipek attended the American Meteorological Society's 24th Conference on Severe Local Storms. They submitted a paper and hosted a presentation on the Elie tornado. They showed that the damage did point to an F5 rating, but the survey team was concerned that it was weaker than F5 strength and that the extreme damage it caused was due to its slow movement and looping behaviour. The survey team thought that it could have relentlessly pounded the houses into a higher level of destruction. However, thanks to video evidence from people watching the tornado, they were able to see that the structural failures were quick. The structural assessments indicated that the homes were well built and generally well secured. In particular, one of the destroyed homes met all of the requirements for the highest damage rating. Finally, the team noted that had the Enhanced Fujita scale been used, it would have qualified for an EF5 rating. At that time, the United States was already using the Enhanced Fujita scale, but the only tornado rated at an EF5 was a previously mentioned Greensburg tornado earlier that year. With Canada having switched to the Enhanced Fujita scale in April 2013, the Elie tornado will forever remain the only F5 rated tornado to hit Canada. Since then, nothing has matched its intensity, although 2 F4 rated tornadoes have occurred, the August 2018 Alonzo, Manitoba tornado and the July 2023 Didsbury, Alberta tornado. Given the path that this tornado took through Elie and how long it lingered over residential areas, it is astonishing that not a single injury or fatality occurred. That day, however, remains firmly etched in the minds of those in Elie, especially those who lost their homes. Let us hope that no one else in Canada has to experience a tornado of that intensity again, as they may not be so lucky next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos about severe weather events in Canada. It really helps me out. Were you personally affected by this tornado? What do you remember about that day? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time.